You're actually employing wisdom there. Does that help? All right. So who's next? Okay. Then I'll come here. Just a minute.
Hi. I was wondering if you could talk about the relationship between labeling and language.
Oh, Wittgenstein.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, Wittgenstein.
That's a good place to start.
Labeling and language. I think, generally speaking, there is a connection between the two. Obviously, language and label, labeling and language has a connection there, common connection. But at the same time, there's a differences here because language is a collection of working with the sound, right? Letters, words, so it's a collection of things. And also, of course, the thought processes there. Whereas a labeling does not necessarily have to have a language there. It can be mind labeling, mental projection. It can be some kind of a vivid mind experience labeling. For example, the labeling of duality, right? We have a strong labeling of duality, and that labeling of duality doesn't really need even language or words, right? There's a sense of duality there, feeling. And that's already labeling from the Buddha's point of view. Does that make sense? Or
Beginning to, yes.
Beginning to. Thank you. Me too. Thank you very much. We have a question here.
Which one?
Rinpoche, back to the earlier woman's question. I have a limited training or education in Buddhism right now, and I have this sense that really ultimately everything's my projection. So I have this view that even the bad job and the bad boss and everything is all coming from my side. But I'm still living in, a very unpracticed, ordinary being person. And what I'm finding is that, I feel like sometimes I'm in a box with this, or between a rock and a hard place, where now I have enough information to know that all of this is my projection, but at the same time, how do I operate in a world even with things I'm seeing in the Dharma or teachings or whatever, and feel okay with some of the things that I'm seeing and not feel like, well, I have to back off and it's just from my side. I don't know if that makes sense, but it feels like a catch-22, like I feel like it can be a little paralyzing with the limited experience I have with these ultimate conceptions.
Right. Yes, actually there's always the need for us to balance, balance the two. There's the ultimate view, which many spiritual traditions teach, like Buddhism, Hinduism, anything. And then there's also the relative reality, right? Relative world. So we have to balance the two. These two should support each other. So the absolute view, that the spiritual view that you just mentioned from the Buddha's teaching, for example, yes, it's important for us to understand there's a certain element of our projection going on. Projection is taking place. And at the same time, we should also see that others' projection, which is also going on at the same time, right? Like your boss is a projection, and your colleagues, everyone's a projection, right? It's not just your projection, but everyone here involved, we have different projections going on. So we have to experience and see the complexity of projections going on in our relative world. And at the same time, we have to see how best we can solve this practically, right? Not just from the spiritual view, but in practice. What can we do? Sometimes it's important to be a little bit strict and straight, open, direct. It's important. Sometimes it's important to sit back and reflect, right? So you have to find the right time, when to step forward, and make it open dialogue to solve the problem, work with it. And at the same time, when it's a good time to sit back and reflect on the situation. So that's the hard part, to know when to do it, right? And that's the only thing is the hard part, which you have to make the decision because you are in that environment. None of us are in that environment. For example, when I'm in such a situation, I have to do it because I'm the only one who's in the environment, right? And so therefore you have to use your rational mind, logical mind to make that decision. At the same time, you have to see how we can solve this through working both in a relative sense and also with the absolute view. So both is very important. To balance the two is very important. That's why the Mahayana teaching said that genuine compassion doesn't mean that we always smile at people. Genuine compassion doesn't always mean that you have to show the other cheek when someone slaps on your face, right? It is said from some Buddhist teachings that such action is a little bit selfish even. It's not compassionate, it's selfish. Because you're only concerned about your karma. You're only concerned about your face. You don't want to appear as an aggressive person, or you don't want to appear as impatient person. You want to appear as a nice person. You want to be a good practitioner. You want to have a good karma.